Welcome to Conversations, Season 2 of the MTA podcast series, a weekly audio cast featuring interviews with leading investment strategists, geopolitical experts, and other key thought leaders, brought to you by the Market Technicians Association.
Friday, June 1st, 2012. This is Conversations, the official MTA podcast series. And today's guest is Smokin' Joe Granville. Born in 1923 in Yonkers, New York, Joe Granville lived there until winning a music scholarship in 1939 to the Todd School for Boys in Woodstock, Illinois. In 1942, he entered Duke University, but left to enter the Navy and was stationed in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific. Discharged in 1945, he graduated from Duke in 1948. From there, he spent a year at Columbia doing postgraduate work. Joe was hired by E.F. Hutton in 1957 to write their daily market letter. Joe left Hutton in 1963 to write the Granville market letter and continues writing today. Joe Granville, welcome to the program.
Well, great to be with you.
Wonderful. We're absolutely delighted that you had time to join us from Kansas City this morning. 49 years of the Granville Market Letter. That's a pretty stunning accomplishment, and I wish you another 49. As listeners know, we like to start these podcasts with a little personal history. For example, what was your major in college, and how did you make the transition to technical analysis at that point? What did you do in this time period between Columbia and E.F. Hutton?
Well, my major at Duke University was chemistry, and I was most interested in organic chemistry.
Okay.
And what got me interested in chemistry was the idea I had of synthesizing vitamin A, which was later done. And the person who was successful in synthesizing vitamin A took about 28 steps, and I did it in about 33 steps, starting with the same chemicals and so forth.
Well, then how did you get? So you went from
when I got back from the war, I shifted my emphasis from chemistry to economics.
Ah. Okay. Well, then how does one go from working on economics in university to all of a sudden you're writing the daily market letter for E.F. Hutton? That was quite a jump. You must have done something to make yourself qualified for that.
Well, I had a lot of time to think during the war. I was out in the Pacific, as you mentioned, and did a lot of reading of books and so forth. And while I was out there, I wrote a book. And the book I wrote was predicting future prices of postage stamps.
Oh.
I was a stamp collector, and I got very interested in the investment angle of stamps as an investment. So I wrote a book on it, and while I was out there, my mother got the copyright on it on my birthday of August 20th, 1945, and when I got out of the service in March of 1945, I saw the book for the first time.
How about that?
I did another large book on stamps, the subject of stamps.
Stamps. Well, okay, but I'm still curious how a guy goes from sitting in the Marshall Islands during a war to writing the daily market letter for E.F. Hutton.
Well, that's a very, very interesting journey in my thinking and everything I was doing. But when I got back from the war, that's like most people, I was looking for a job.
Yeah. And
the first job I got was with a insurance firm. Didn't stay with them very long, and then I shifted to Avon Products, and I ran a printing press for Avon Products, but that got boring after a while, and the money wasn't very good, and so I was looking for more opportunities. So I went to New York looking for a job, and lo and behold, I was interviewed by E.F. Hutton, and lo and behold, I was hired as the writer of their market letter. Now, the reason I got the job was because I had done several books of different subjects. My very first book, as a matter of fact, was a book on poetry, which was published very, very early in my career, and that was my first book. And then the book on stamps, and then after doing several books, 5 or 6 books, the people at E.F. Hutton said, heck, he can write, we'll teach him the rest. So I got the job.
That's great. Well, you are a very prolific writer, even more than what your bio states. For those that don't know it, I count 9 books here just on stock market timing. This is really amazing. A lot of books. Are all these books still available?
A large number of them are out of print, of course. The stamp books, of course, are long out of print, and I wouldn't want people to see them anyway because my ideas have changed so radically since then. But the yeah. Okay.
All right.
Jump right in. When I pause like that, jump right in.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, listen, so 49 years of writing this letter, and, you know, there was a time there a couple decades ago that you made quite a splash in the investment community, and people are still talking about it. I've heard stories of you walking on water at an investment conference and emerging from a coffin. What was all this about? Were you quite the showman at one time, or what's the background on these stories?
Well, to publicize what I was doing, and also make more money and so forth, I jumped on the road to starting doing road shows. And so I started doing 2 or 3 interviews a week in different cities of the United States and in Europe. So it took me to a wide area of getting people to know who I was and what I was doing and so forth. So the things I talked about to make the subject matter as interesting as possible, I sort of combined it with show business. In other words, that's why when I was in Alaska, I had a team of husky dogs bring me into the stage, and doing a show in Frankfurt, Germany. I threw a ball up into the air, and the reason I did that was to show that upside momentum tops out before the price does. And therefore, and I even applied that to my analysis of what the market's doing this year, because right on the very first day of the year, first market day of the year was January 3rd, and on that day, upside momentum in this stock market topped out on that day and never got back to that level it was at. So everything started in January.
Yeah. Now, how did you get people to show up to those conferences in order to see you come on stage with husky dogs? How did you promote these things?
I announced in my market letter. I gave an agenda of all my trips and what cities I would be in and when I would be there. So obviously by the time that date rolled around, we had a huge audience waiting to hear me.
I see. Well, okay then. That's fascinating. One last question on that topic is, how was it you ended up on CBS doing a 1-hour primetime show with Mike Wallace? What was that all about?
Well, that was following the publication of my first market book, which was titled A Strategy of Daily Stock Market Timing for Maximum Profit. That's a 12-word title, but it told everything I do. A daily strategy, there I am, daily work of stock market timing. Timing is everything.
Yeah. Well, speaking of daily work, tell us what your typical day looks like now.
Always writing. I'm writing right now when you call me. I'm writing filling in on the coming letter, which will be coming out on June 7th. We have six skips a year, and we're on a skip right now, and the next letter will be published and mailed on June 7th, which I'm still working on right now.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, okay then. We're probably at a point in the program where we like to talk about an analyst toolbox. What type of tools do you use for your analysis? Joe Granville, you're well known for your on-balance volume indicator, but in reviewing some of your work, I noticed something called the Climax Indicator. Maybe you could give us some background on what is the Climax Indicator and what is it that most people don't know about the on-balance volume indicator?
Okay, first of all, you got to realize the importance of OBV, on-balance volume.
All right.
Made this discovery while I was still doing the market letter, while I was still doing the E.F. Hunt market letter in New York. I went into their little research library, and I'm going through many copies of the Wall Street Journal, and suddenly it hit me. It hit me right between the eyes. It was such an important discovery. I discovered that volume precedes price. Now think carefully what I just said. Volume precedes price. In other words, volume in this market for the last 2 years has been going down.
Right.
Now, since I told you volume precedes price, that tells me that the market is going to go down for the next 2 years, which is precisely what we're doing. And this crash started in May of this year. I started talking about the declines in early February, and then they got worse in March, and very much so in April, and then bingo, May 1st. May 1st, the Wall Street Journal was pumping so bullish because the Dow went up 143 points on May 1st. But what they didn't tell you is that on that day, I flashed a major Mayday warning. Now, being an old Navy man, a Mayday signal means that an aircraft or a ship is under attack. Now, right now, this stock market is under major attack. And being an old Navy man, on May 1st, the title of my letter was Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. In other words, we are being attacked. The stock market, like an airplane or a ship, is going down. So now you see what happened in the month of May. Right. I stated that on the first day of May. It so turned out that May, the month just ended, is the worst month in 143 years in terms of how many days up and how many days down. And as you see, we only went up 4 days in the month. 4 days. Yeah. The rest of the month straight down.
When you say it was the worst month in 143 years, how are you tracking that prior to the Dow in 1897?
No, I just picked that up from a newspaper that reported that. Right. You know, I didn't go down and measure how many years, but right. I do know that you've only gone up 4 days in May.
Right.
And that was, I'd never seen anything like that ever. It was the first. So we are in very, very critical times. Very. And as a matter of fact, while I'm talking, we just made another very, very extremely bearish signal today in closing under 12,250. We're under that right now.
Right,
which
right.
means, as far as as I announced in this new letter coming out, that if you go under that signal, like the Japanese, it's sayonara. Goodbye.
What can you tell us about?
Now we hear goodbye all over the world.
Yeah.
Remember,
well, it sure looks that way, doesn't it? What can you tell us about the Climax Indicator?
I'm following the charts. I'm following the charts of Chinese stocks, Russian stocks, and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And
what is the Climax Indicator?
Okay, now, what the Climax Indicator is simply the number of stocks that close up, number of Dow stocks that close up, as opposed to the number that close down. So therefore, I subtract the decliners from the advancers, and that net number is the Climax Indicator. Now, what you have to realize, very, very important, when I tell you something in the market letter, I am not following the Dow. Everyone follows the Dow. I don't even follow the Dow. But I apply volume numbers. My whole theory is volume. So all my volume numbers are applied to the Dow, to the 30 Dow stocks. And from that volume analysis, I have developed a whole set of volume indicators. You just mentioned one, the Climax Indicator. Then I have 4 internal numbers, which are extremely important, all based on volume. OBV higher ups, OBV higher downs, OBV lower downs, and OBV lower ups. They make 4 different numbers, and from those 4 numbers, that is the basis of my stock market timing for what the market's going to do the next day. And again, I remind you that I was awarded again by Timer Digest the 2011 Timer of the Year.
Well, I see that. The 2011 Timer of the Year Award, the 2003 Long-Term Timer of the Year, the 2005 and 2006 Gold Timer of the Year. Your record's very impressive, Joe. Now, we're down to about our last 3 minutes, and I still have a couple questions I want to hit you with. We've done a pretty good job of getting through my list here. I want to take advantage of this opportunity to always ask people, who have been your influences? What books did really helped you along? And what I find is typically, I hope you take this the right way. A lot of people, for example, just last week, I was trading emails with Walter Deemer, and he said Joe Granville was one of my biggest influences, and I can't remember which book of yours it is, on my shelf next to my desk. So I want to take advantage of the opportunity to ask Joe Granville, who were some of your influences and your favorites?
I would say I was most influenced, still am, and I constantly pick it up and reread it. Never get tired of reading it. I highly recommend people to get it. It's still in print. Reminiscences of a Stock Operator.
Right.
You must have read it.
Right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Now, you know who that was written by?
Livermore.
That's right, Jesse Livermore. And Jesse Livermore, he went through all his experiences as a young man and getting interested in stocks and his daily activities and so forth. And I saw all these things that Wall Street is always doing the wrong thing. Wall Street constantly doing the wrong thing. Wall Street is totally fundamental. I am totally 1,000% technical. And therefore, anything Wall Street tells you, it's so easy to blow a hole in it. And that's why it doesn't influence me whatsoever. But this man's writing got me so interested in technical analysis at a very early age. So I never get tired.
Joe, and this is probably more to our listeners than it is you. There was a new version of that book written, I say written, it's an annotated edition put together by a gentleman up here in the Seattle market, and I'm struggling to find it in my bookshelf right now, and I can't, but what would make it fascinating for people younger than yourself is a lot of the references and the names of people in that book, written almost 100 years ago, don't really ring with people today the way it would, somebody back then, or maybe even yourself. But in this book, he puts little bubbles and text boxes off to the side and explains who so-and-so is that's being referred to by Livermore. And it really makes it for a lot more interest. Oh, here it is. The annotated edition by, John Markman. I should know that name. He's got an office in downtown Seattle. But I think for those who haven't read the book, and even for those who have, it really adds some color to that book. Listen, I'm sorry for interrupting you there. Okay, last couple questions.
Another great book. Don't ever forget it.
Okay.
Constantly should be reread constantly. Oh. It's always right by my desk here. I doubt if I go through a day without reading something from it. The Great Crash, 1929, by John Kenneth Galbraith.
Ah.
The Great Crash, classic book. And I love what it said in that book about, here it is right here, the chapter. Fascinating. Okay, here it is. In Goldman Sachs We Trust, Chapter 4. Fantastic description of Goldman Sachs and what they did back in the 1920s and what they're doing now. Very, very bad stuff. Now, not long ago, about 2-3 months ago, Goldman Sachs made an announcement that they're going to be very, very bullish for the rest of this year. Yeah. Bingo. By the way, that told me straight down. And then I looked at my volume numbers and looked at my CLX. CLX is my abbreviation for Climax Indicator. Okay. CLX. I looked at the CLX and the chart I had of it, and bingo. I knew that Goldman Sachs was going to be 1,000% dead wrong, which they are.
Joe, do you think that they do that intentionally, or they're just not with it?
They don't know how to read the market. Why do you think the latest book I wrote was called How to Read the Stock Market? Mm-hmm. In my latest book, How to Read the Stock Market. Most people have the slightest idea how to read the market.
Yeah.
They go to the newspaper and they look at the Dow and they look at earnings. Do you realize earnings are the worst of all indicators? The earnings are the worst from a timing standpoint.
Uh-huh. I believe you.
And what are they talking about now? Oh, they're talking about earnings. Well, they've got nothing else to talk about. Oh, well, that's that company's earnings. Who cares what they earn? They made it over and over. The time to buy a stock is when there are no earnings.
Yeah.
Really. The time to sell a stock is when there are good earnings.
Yeah. Oh, okay, Joe. We're really out of time here, so we're going to have to wrap it up. It's been just fantastic having you join us today. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we go, like how a person can see your letter, perhaps?
Just in case they don't know it, I want to make a quick statement.
Okay.
Next year, I will be 90 years old.
Happy birthday.
90. And I'm enjoying what I'm doing now more than anything I've ever done in my life. And there's a lesson here. Mm-hmm. People should always do what they love to do. And if they don't, if they're not loving it, they better shift and find something they do love to do. I've seen too many people that don't like what they do. And they hate their job and so forth right now. I don't see how anyone could hate their job. Just to have a job is a big achievement. But anyway, they hate what they do, and they should always look for something they would love to do.
Yeah, that sounds like good advice. All right, today's guest has been Joe Granville, and that wraps up this week's MTA podcast. From SeattleTechnicalAdvisors.com, I'm Ed Carlson, together with our recording engineer, Shane Squark, in New York City. Let's keep our stops tight. Good day.